If you're talking about pretty much any video game on the internet in 2019, you're likely to hear the phrase,
"That'd be perfect for the Switch."
And aside from the games that are more graphically demanding, just about everything really is perfect for the Switch, which would explain why multiplats almost always sell better on the platform if you take install bases into consideration, despite the fact that games usually don't make their way over to the hybrid until long after their initial release dates and usually at a higher price. Which begs two questions that are way more important than anything else going on in the world right now. Why exactly do games typically sell better on the Switch, and are people stupid for preferring those versions? Well, stay tuned, pour yourself a cup of hot cocoa, pull the plug on your dumbass step-uncle so you could give this video your full attention, press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, the most noble saint alive, Cameron, to tell you 5 reasons why games are just better on the Nintendo Switch more often than not. Number 5. Cartridges are more fun than discs. Aside from tasting way better than Blu-rays, Switch cartridges are just plain more fun to own. And no, they're not game cards, they're cartridges. Even if that's not true at all, it's just more fun to pretend. Don't at me. Sure, cartridges can be more expensive sometimes, which causes companies like Capcom to be cheap little buttholes from time to time by only including small portions of bigger games on the carts, which defeats most of the purpose of buying physical in the first place. But that's really only a problem for the bigger games, because the smaller games are actually cheaper to manufacture than PS4 and Xbox One discs, which is perfect for indie games and even smaller games from AAA developers like Mega Man 11, where thankfully Capcom wasn't a butthole. Plus, along with cartridges being cooler than Blu-rays, the Switch cases display an ass hair more nicely as well. And even though it's really hard to scratch Blu-rays, and it's unlikely that you'd ever snap one by accident, the Switch cartridges are even more difficult to do any real damage to unless you're actually trying. Sure, the small size makes it far more likely to lose them, but, yeah, alright, I've got nothing. I could totally see even grown adults losing Switch cartridges thanks to them being smaller than my peak. Number 4. NES. Switch versions of games are usually complete, except for Capcom, as I've mentioned earlier. Come on, guys, you're better than that. Yeah, you usually do have to wait a little bit longer to get games on the Switch, but rather than your physical copies being paperweights in a post-apocalyptic world without 37 day one patches, the wait usually results in the full version of most games. And call me crazy, but being able to play a game on day one without mandatory patches is something that should have never gone away in the first place. I know that damn near everyone has internet in 2019, and I've never actually been affected by this issue just yet, but it's the principle of the matter that gets me riled up. Because updates should only be meant to fix minor issues with games, rather than be used as an excuse to get games out sooner. And while this isn't a big deal at all for games that are meant to be played online, or if you prefer downloading games digitally anyway, but it's just more definitive owning games on the Switch. Because it actually feels like a console, whereas the PS4 and Xbox One feel like gaming boxes where the physical media is pretty much pointless due to all the extra downloads and what have you. And I'm sure to catch some heat in the comments for saying this, but one of the most confusing things I've ever seen is people who collect games for consoles like the Xbox 360 and the PS3. And no, it's not because I'm a Nintendo fan, man. I had my fair share of Dreamcast, PS1, and 2 games after all, but it's because many of the 360 and PS3 games are unplayable without updates. And I know Switch games get day one patches as well, even for multiplats that come out much later, and it certainly sucks when games can't even fit on the cartridges. I mean, I actually waited for Wolfenstein 2 to come to the Switch, only to realize that through no fault of Bethesda, the full game didn't come on the cartridge due to Nintendo procrastinating the 64GB cards. So I figured if I'm buying a paperweight anyway, I might as well save $40. Because at least PS4 discs are actually heavy enough to hold paper down, so I'm not completely screwed in a post-apocalyptic world. But more often than on the other consoles, Switch games usually contain the full experience without getting the internet involved, thanks to Nintendo not pulling that shit in the first place with their first-party games, and for having to wait a little longer for the multiplats. And it's for all these reasons why I usually sell my PS4 games after I'm finished playing with them, and I just can't seem to let go of my Switch games. Number 3. More control options. Alright, I know this one's gonna steam the claims of many people, because Joy-Con shenanigans aside, a lot of people probably prefer the Xbox One's controller over the Switch Pro controller, especially since it comes included with the console. And there might even be a few sickos out there who think the PS4 controller's the best. Although, to be honest, I only said that to get a cheap pop since I know everybody hates the PS4 controller. But to tell you the truth, even though it's my least favorite controller of the three, I don't see a problem with it. But I'm not here to determine which controller's the king or anything like that. I'll leave that up to the comments section. All I'm saying is that on top of the Switch having the option for traditional controls that are at the very least on par with its competitors, developers can also give their games the option for alternate control schemes if need be. And even though some people hate motion controls no matter what, and there really aren't many Switch games thus far that are better with all that gyro stuff built into the controllers, it certainly doesn't hurt to have more options as long as none of them are forced. But regardless of the fact that every multiplat on the Switch that I could think of plays better with the Pro controller, it's only a matter of time before we get some third-party games that truly benefit with subtle motion and pointing controls added in here and there. Number 2. Graphics aren't as important as they used to be. I probably say this too often on this channel, so I won't spend too much time on this point, but graphical differences aren't as noticeable between the PS4 and Xbox One compared to the Switch as they were with the NES and Super Nintendo to 64, PS1 to PS2, or even the Xbox to Xbox 360. Because after that generation, we reached the everything looks fine threshold to where now we're really just comparing small things like how many hairs are on characters' asses. And I say for the most part, because graphics absolutely still do matter, and the Switch would have been way better if it just had a little bit more cream under the hood. Because porting multiplats over is a pain in the ass for developers. Plus, there's games like Red Dead Redemption 2 or Bubsy 4 that can't come to the Switch without being completely neutered. But when you look at how much Bethesda can get out of the Switch, it just makes you wonder if some of the more graphically demanding games really aren't possible, or if developers just don't think it's worth the trouble. Even with some missing multiplats aside though, the graphics just haven't been much of a factor as to how well games sell and play on the Switch. Especially when, number 1, the Switch is portable. Just because it's obviously the number 1 reason why games sell better on the Switch doesn't mean that it shouldn't top the list just for the sake of swerving the viewer. Because even if you consider the Switch to be a portable that could be played on a TV more so than a console that you could take on the go, and there is a difference, there's no denying that it's probably one of the most convenient features in gaming history to essentially get 2 games for the price of 1, in the sense that you no longer have to buy separate handheld versions just to take watered-down console games on the go. Because Nintendo realized my second point that graphics reached the everything looks fine stage years ago, so why not just make one platform that plays games at home and on the go? I'm sure Nintendo realized this while co-developing Smash for the 3DS and Wii U at the same time. I mean, since both games were pretty much the exact same thing on both platforms, it's no wonder that most Smash fans didn't feel the need to buy a Wii U when the 3DS version looked about 92% as good, which is probably why Nintendo just decided to merge their consoles and handhelds in one platform. But even though multiplats still don't look as good on the Switch, you can still at the very least just look at those as the portable versions, and I don't see that as a reason to complain, because nobody cared when games didn't look as good on the Game Boy as they did the Super Nintendo or the Vita compared to the PS3 or 4. So why is it that in some circles on the internet, Switch versions of games get so much hate just because they have the extra option to play on the TV as well? Probably because it's mainly promoted as a console. But as I've said many times in the past 2 years, the games still look just fine to me. And what also looks just fine to me are the badasses who support this channel on Patreon for loot boxes and Polaroids in the mail, as well as all the sexy beasts who picked up our shirts and coffee mugs. And if you want to make an appearance in our videos, then just send us pictures or videos of you rocking our shirts and mugs, just like this sophisticated gentleman right here. What do you think about games selling better on the Switch, though? Do you prefer owning games on the Switch? Or do you think people are stupid? Either way, let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, I'll pin whatever I find most entertaining or intriguing. Don't forget to press the subscribe button if you're a super ultra mecha Godzilla badass who likes being pandered to and end slates. And if you'd like and share this video to help this channel grow, then it'd really help me feed my many illegitimate fathers. My name's Cameron, and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty. Thank you for your support.